What's up, fam? Extraordinary Life with Elijah. And today, all of my friends and community in my real estate building practice and my youth group kids are my extra, and I am the ordinary. So many years ago in my youth group, when I was a youth pastor at First Alliance, all my youth, they taught me so much. Oh my goodness. Oh, I think all of you guys, if you're watching this video, you all taught me so much in God and discipled me. I pray that I discipled you in a very small measure to the degree with which you discipled me. As I was in youth ministry and was discipling all of my kids, they taught me so much about generational transference, about how to transfer authority in leadership to those who are under your authority in order to move forward in the kingdom in a multiplied manner. It says that Jesus prophesied over us that we would do everything that he had been doing and that we would do greater. So the culture of the kingdom of heaven is that success is in the excess of succession. So to break that down, people who are under authority in the kingdom should always do better than those who are over them. That glory grows into glory, and that talents entrusted to faithful servants will be multiplied in excess. So success is in the excess of succession. Now, my extra also is all of my friends and family that have helped me to break into the experience of what reproductive respiration looks like in practice. Now, it's not just a theory, that I've been able to experience the living reality of the truths that God has given to me. I broached this conversation a long while back. I'll link that video up above so you can go and watch it. There's so much stuff to go over with reproductive respiration, but I'll just jump into the next iteration in a very, very lengthy conversation. Central to the understanding of the leadership paradigm of reproductive respiration is an equilateral triangle. Now, there's a lot of geometric shapes, but an equilateral triangle is one of the central shapes. Within the equilateral triangle, which we're going to define as A, B, and C, the dynamics that operate within the equilateral triangle are so pivotal to understanding how to lead effectively as an authority within the kingdom of heaven. At point A, we're to say that there is a hydraulic arm that extends along the base from point A to point B, and that there is a little truck that is attached to this line BC, that has to travel all the way to the top in order to ring a bell up here at the very top at C. In order for the hydraulic arm that is attached at this point and attached to this truck, in order to move that truck upwards, the dynamics that exist is that along these lines, below this transition point, the dynamics are pull, and at this transition point here, which we will call point D, after that point is dynamics of push. Now, it's very easy to understand in that line A, B is greater than line A, D, and line A, D is less than line A, C. So, the short of it, in order for the truck to move upwards towards D, the hydraulic arm that is extended out to the length AB in this bottom portion has to contract. And after point D, that it has to expand. So in the bottom portion, leadership has to pull in on their followers, and at point D, they have to push them out. Now, within modern organizations and ministry movements, primarily, leaders only get up to this transition point at D, that there is a ceiling that they hit that extends right along to this transition point, and that on this lower portion, there is 2/3 of their entire life's calling. The whole equilateral triangle ABC, is the definition of all of the good works of a specific leader or movement or calling of God. But most leaders, unfortunately, only progress to the point that is their ceiling. They think this is their ceiling because most leaders never progress past this point. But while this is a majority of the space that is below the ceiling, that is 2/3 or 66.6%, 666. What? Most leaders fail to realize that what they've accomplished is only 50% of what it is that they've been called to do in life. Now, a reason why so many leaders fault out at this point D, in the transition point between pull and push, is that in order to merge through this point D, this transition point, in order to progress through this point D, which is the transition point, leadership has to build momentum in order to pass through that point. If leadership only sneaks up on point D, that transition point, just by pulling straight ahead, and we're doing one thing, we're just pulling steady in the harnesses, and they're just slowly creeping up on this transition point, that by the time you reach it and you hit a 90-degree angle and you can no longer pull without deforming this side of line BC, when you get to that point and you realize you're not moving forward anymore and you're just pulling, if then you reverse and say push, you will either push and just stay static and it'll just pin it there. And as long as there's no motion or weight that pushes down from the top on that truck, and you just push and you lock it out, you're pushing, you'll just stay in that point. But if anything bumps from the top, pushing out, any disruption is going to cause that truck to just slam back down to the bottom. And that's where so many ministries go awry and fail. Now, the beautiful thing that God has shown me is that there are 4 individual points all along the line from A, B, C through point D, which is a transition point, that there are 4 other points throughout this cycle that are pivotal to the forward advancement, to accomplishing the full destiny of leadership, to break into the good works that they have to release into the next generation. Oh, so beautiful. Here's our ceiling again. There's 2/3 on this bottom portion, and as leadership pulls and pushes on their people under them in leadership, it's really hard to draw and talk at the same time, that in order to build forward momentum up to the top, that on the way from moving the truck from B to C in pulling and then pushing, that in order to build momentum into this transition point, that here at this first juncture, there is translation into response ability. Translation into responsibility. Now, within the dynamics of leadership, this first point is one that has to be proactively chosen by leadership. Without proactively choosing this, leadership can choose to ignore this point. However, in moving forward in pulling in resources, pulling in, constraining your followers and teaching them and training them, that you're building a relationship and intimacy, you can ignore this spot, and many do it to the detriment of forward momentum. It's often easier, rather than helping your children who are under you to break into responsibility and going to the bathroom by themselves and learning how to brush their teeth and how to dress themselves, it's often easier just to do those things for them. However, if they don't learn how to respond within those abilities, by the time you get to the point where you need to transition, you have very immature people that don't know how to fend for themselves. So within this first marker, this would be like Jesus, where he had the 12 disciples and he began to give them his authority and to send them out to heal the sick, to raise the dead, to open blind eyes, and then invite them back and have them report. How did you do? Oh, wrong way to use your responsibility, my friends, and send them back out again. That was Jesus in this space, helping to translate his ability into their responsibility before his transition back to the Father. So during this first three and a half year period of Jesus walking on earth, he was pulling in his disciples and helping them to be able to have responsibility in the kingdom, such that from this point B up to this point, that Jesus was carrying his disciples, but that then he translated the kingdom into them in order that they could then begin to have the heart language and fluency of the kingdom in order to carry it forward under his guidance to the point here at the transition point at D. Now here at D, we have transformation into transition. Jumping over the line into a full transition happens through transformation. Obviously, in the spiritual context, that's where we are transformed from death into life. And as Jesus pulls us into the kingdom, that none of us have chosen him, but that he chose us, and that we've been placed in his hands, and none that have been given to him have been lost. That he grabs us and that he pulls us into the kingdom, that we are transformed in his life and are transitioned then from the kingdom of death into the kingdom of life. So beautiful. Now at this point, we can see that Jesus has pulled his disciples in, but that he says, I am going away, that if I don't go away, the Holy Spirit will not come. But when he comes, he, the Spirit of truth, will lead you into all truth and tell you of what is yet to come. It's better that I go and he comes. That's our transition point. And so from here, rather than Jesus pulling the disciples in, now he's saying, go. That Jesus is now pushing them out. Now, after the transition point then, that then there is participation, which results in a shift into accountability. So at this point, participation within the kingdom, that we're pushing out now, that we are the outgoing expression of Jesus's authorability in the world for us to steward according to his responsibility in and through us, that we now have participation within the kingdom. We have place, we have participation, we have value, we have drive, we have destiny within that. And that as a result of that, and being pushed out into that authorability, that we now have accountability. Now, in the parable of the talents, again, the result of accountability is shared participation in the master's joy. The end result of accountability is always joy. So as we move forward in being transformed into the image of Christ from death into life, and that as we transition then into a period of walking in the kingdom, that then we also likewise start inviting other people into participation with us in increased accountability. that the writer of Hebrews says, you should now long all be teachers. That Jesus himself said, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I commanded you. Once past this transition point, you never have to then engage this middle point ever again, that you can just keep going and going. But disciples reproduce. I'm really doing my best to keep on track and keep this as concise as possible at 18 minutes, 48 seconds, but there's so much here. Back moving towards C, that in inviting other people, then intentionally choosing to teach others and to keep pushing them out and growing in number, progressing on up to C, then is inclusion within authorability. And authorability is the freedom to act. In as much as I started with a white sheet and I'm authoring things on this, that is authorability, which is the freedom to act. Now, the beauty within this is that those who are then under authority are invited into taking this bottom portion, which is only 50% of a person's life calling, and that at this point of pulling in your leaders, that there's this small gap that's below your ceiling that is still within the realm of pull, that can't be achieved by a leader, that they can't break into this 1/4 portion that remains of their full life's calling on their own in a context of pull. However, that once those who are faithful under their leadership step to the plate to say, we will move forward in your authority to fulfill the fullness of everything that you have dreamed of in God. In this top portion that is the remaining 1/4 of the full expression of a leader's responsibility in God, that as they push out, they pull their leadership up with them. Now, this is the beauty of generational transferences, of sons turning their hearts towards their fathers and their fathers towards their sons, that in the ability to translate the destiny and the vision and the calling and the purpose of a father generation, that learning how to translate that in a fluent heart language of a previous generation, that as the future generation, which are still connected to the authority that's over them, they're the Joshuas under the Moses, they're the disciples under Jesus while he's still on earth, that as they are beginning to push out, being sent by their authority, that the expression of their push into the further reaches of the kingdom is then translated and received in this last 1/4 of the fulfillment of leadership's ministry, where they're no longer working, but they're being pulled along by those that are connected to them, that the push of the next generation is received in the heart language of an older generation's pull as they merge towards the finish line of their destiny and ministry on earth. Now, I did my best. I hope that is concise and not incredibly random and confusing. But the way that I experienced that recently is in the expression of the startup of my real estate company. In starting my real estate company, rather than just taking all of my ideas and everything that I intended within business and doing it myself, I grabbed my community and I pulled them into my dream for venue real estate. And as I pulled in on them and it empowered them to respond out of the vision and the calling that God has given me, they translated the heart that I had and their responsibility transformed my vision and heart into God, into an expression that was so far above what I would have been able to reach, that it was otherworldly, supernatural joy. And so I literally and physically experienced having good works for God that He gave me to do. And as I pulled other people into my process, I pulled them in. I pulled that we began to lift the vision of Venue Real Estate off the ground. It started going up. And that as it started going up, rather than me having all the words, I proactively chose to let my community define my graphics and all the elements of my company, and that they then translated through responsibility what good works that God gave me to do, and that they lifted me up as I allowed them to rule and reign within my calling, not to rein them in with a bit in their mouth, but to call them into ruling and reigning. They then transformed my vision and my calling into an expression that I never, ever thought possible, such that then when we transitioned into a place of pushing outwards to birth Venue Real Estate into the world, I had increased participation with a larger community that were called into my accountability, which includes them within a participation of my shared joy in the Father, which is the inclusion of them in my author ability. Oh my goodness. Oh, I hope you're tracking with me. Oh, it has been such a joy and a pleasure getting to see everything that God has built into me by way of revelation that I have stewarded for years and years, being born into living experienced reality. I don't have an encouragement for you. We're already 26 minutes, 38 seconds into this monster. If you would like to hear more about what God has taught me in reproductive respiration, reach out to me. I'd love to get coffee with you and tell you more about it, and maybe I can extract an encouragement for you there. If you subscribe to what I am doing, which is a lot, then hit the button, hit it and then get it. Hit the bell as well so you get notified with the new content. And if you loved this video, you didn't just like it, hit the thumbs down button. I pray blessings on your day. I love you guys lots, and I will see you in the next video.